Well, hey, and welcome to another live stream with Barry Hawkins. We have been making our way through effective development process at the team level. We've gone through the key outcomes of effective development process. We've looked at the events. We have looked at the artifacts and the metrics. And now we come to talking about the roles in effective development process. We'll begin with talking about the first of three roles, the Team Steward. The roles are one of the least discussed, most assumed, and most often misunderstood parts of effective development process in terms of what are the distinct roles, who should play those roles, what are the expectations on those roles. And so what I've found over the last nearly 20 years now is that I have to spend no small amount of time clarifying what those roles are, what their intended purposes are, and what should be expected of people filling those roles. So let's dive in to the Team Steward. First of all, what is the Team Steward? The Team Steward defined. It's not just a Scrum Master, though a Scrum Master can be one. That's a very common question I get. Team Steward has in its name Steward because stewardship to me is at the heart of the effective fulfillment of this role, because a steward is responsible for shepherding and caring for something that is not their own. It's something that's owned by other persons predominantly. It might be owned by them in part, but not for the most part. For the most part, it's owned by others, and it is their job, it is their charge to effectively steward that work. And that's why they are the Team Steward, because they are supposed to steward the work of the team and the team itself in their job to deliver software product development outcomes. And the Team Steward as a role, it's one expression of the craft of delivery management. Delivery management goes under a number of other terms. I usually refer to delivery management as the overarching umbrella term, but in some places it's called development management. In some game studios, it's called production. In some mainstream software product development settings, it's a technical program manager or a program manager. In some settings, the role is filled by an engineering manager. But delivery management is not just discreetly rehearsing the mechanics of a project management methodology or software development methodology. It's far more, and that's at the heart of being an effective Team Steward. So let's dive in on the three main aspects of effective team stewardship. First, the Team Steward as a role has at its heart stewarding the team's health and effectiveness. The health, that is, how well they are doing as a group of people, how well the individuals are doing in their interactions and relationships with one another. And then the effectiveness of that team in being able to understand their schedulable planning capacity, understanding how that sits alongside the capacity that they must reserve for interrupt-driven, unscheduled work that hits them on average every cycle. The Team Steward facilitates those interactions, that activity. Now, one key aspect of team stewardship that's often overlooked is that usually, typically, almost always, I highly recommend that a team steward have sufficient domain knowledge in the field or part or aspect of software product development or digital entertainment, what have you, that their teams are a part of doing. So to that end, a team that works on back-end services should have someone who understands what an API is, the difference between co-located and cloud-hosted settings, the predominant tech stacks, the different infrastructure implications. They need to know enough around that domain to know what good looks like. They need to understand the software development and software engineering practices that are part of an effective development process. If, to pick a contrasting example, if there's someone who works, who stewards a team that does art, for example, in game development, an art team, an environment art team, or a skins team, for those who know what that means. For those who don't know what a skins team means, I probably just, that sounded really gross, but it's not, I promise. At least not usually. But in those settings, I typically see tech artists or art leads or art directors who have exposure to and understand, like, what is good throughput, what is a good pipeline, what does a good division of labor and workload look like. They understand that in the field of 3D art and animation. Now, it could be having that domain knowledge. Now, am I saying, well, only people who have been software engineers before or artists before can be effective in this role? Not saying that at all. That's one possible entry path, but there can also be just people who have spent years managing the work of those kinds of teams, and so they know what good and effective work looks like for those types of teams. Some of the most effective team stewards I've seen have been people who come from a project or program management background, and they learn that deeper craft of delivery management within that specific domain. So sufficient domain knowledge to know what good looks like. And then the third key aspect of their role in their work is they facilitate the development process. When it comes to that development cycle that we've talked about in other streams, a cycle that begins with pulling in a body of work, committing to projecting a batch of work during cycle planning, delivering that day over day, ensuring that handoffs aren't missed or that items that are completed don't sit for days before the next person picks it up. Facilitating all of that interaction, the team's awareness and visibility into the work and how that's going. That is predominantly the team steward's role to facilitate, and facilitate, not drive. You'll see some folks and some training actually foster or nurture somewhat of a, oh, you're the taskmaster, or you're the person running around with your hair on fire. I hear that, and I actually hear that metaphor a lot. That is not what effective team stewardship is. In facilitating the development process, you understand the why and the intended interaction among the team members for each aspect of the development cycle, and you are facilitating, planning, and dynamically reacting in the moment to help the team have the kind of interaction that they're supposed to have. So, stewarding team health and effectiveness, sufficient domain knowledge to know what good looks like, and then facilitating the development process in service of those things, in service of team health, in service of team effectiveness, and in service of having a high bar, knowing what good looks like, and nurturing the team toward meeting that bar as far as the practices, procedures, standards that your group or organization normalize on. And that's the team steward. So let's see, what questions do we have for this? It looks like mostly submissions this time. All right. Why don't you just say Scrum Masters when instead of Team Stewards? I don't say Scrum Masters instead of Team Stewards the same way that I don't say sandpaper when I'm talking about toilet paper. The two of them do very different things, and therefore I use the specific terms. Both sandpaper and toilet paper are effective at removing one thing from another thing. But each of them in their own strengths, I would not want to use in the other setting because they would not be specific, they would not be effective in those. So it is with Scrum Masters and Team Stewards. Not every Scrum Master is functioning as, nor are they trained as, a Team Steward, and not every Team Steward is a Scrum Master. Not every team uses Scrum. Scrum is a horrible fit for some teams. In fact, most teams that do art type work, Scrum is awful. That's not usually batch type work. That is usually flow-based work. And when we eventually have streams and series on flow-based methodologies and like Kanban, we'll go into that more deeply. But team stewardship, part of the challenge, and this comes out of one of the unfortunate outcomes of the certification movement that blossomed in the early to late 2000s around Scrum, is that you had just thousands and thousands of people who were taken through material, and largely what they were shown in much of that training, and especially what they took away, was the rote rehearsing of mechanics, as opposed to understanding the mindset and the philosophy and the degree of facilitation that's required in effective team stewardship. So what you basically had were folks like classical project managers or super micromanaging engineering managers who were given a new set of tools, and they just basically found out how to take the same interpersonal approach that they were doing the day before and now jam that into sprints and daily stand-ups, burn down charts, reviews and retrospectives. And it's, effective team stewardship is so much more than the rote rehearsal of Scrum mechanics. So that's a longer answer than I probably intended on why I don't just say Scrum Masters. I did for a number of years, and when I found that that term wasn't suiting the interaction and message that I was seeking to foster, that's when I had to come up with new terminology. All right. Are team stewards basically project managers? This may sound exactly like the prior question, but it's not quite. I'll attempt to explain. Most team stewards, so for one, I mean, part of the prior answer does apply to this, in that team stewardship is not just taking a project management methodology and mindset and cramming it into, a Scrum or what you think Kanban or a flow-based methodology is, but also a team steward has to have a far longer view of the team and what the team works on, because in effective development process, in the software product development setting, it is distinct and different from project management, because project management, true, like official project management, you're typically dealing with a project that has a charter, has a distinct start and a distinct end. And with software product development, you don't really have that. In fact, at any one time, you have any number of projects or programs or initiatives that are moving through your team that typically have dependencies with 1 to 45 other teams. And that's just a very different setting than what a project manager typically has, which is a more finite body of work with, at least the belief is, more static dependencies that can all be Gantt charted very easily and held to an original plan that was, formulated some 6 to 18 months prior. So yeah, not quite. Team stewards are a bit more, and they're different. Now they're in their different specializations because there are settings where project management is the appropriate technique for the workload. But most of the things we talk about on this live stream and this YouTube channel have to do with software product development, which is more in line with the conditions and context that I've been discussing to date. All right, question, the efficiency question. Isn't this just something a team member or engineering manager can do? Yes, they can. Typically, it won't be done at the level of effectiveness that someone who's been focused on and specializes in delivery management can do, because team members and engineering managers, they have a job. They have a job and a specialization and a focus. They have a craft that they've been honing for some amount of time. And that craft, the craft of an individual team member or an engineering manager, is not delivery management. When it's just part of someone's job or a side responsibility or an extra hat they're wearing, then you're typically not experiencing the degree of effectiveness and specialization that you're going to see with a team steward, with someone fully filling the team steward role. It can be, I mean, heavens, all of the years that I spent as an engineering manager and director where I was, Scrum Mastering or team stewarding my teams, I took it pretty seriously. And it was those experiences that led me deeper and deeper into delivery management and doing, what I've been doing for some time now. But that's a common question, and many organizations do decide, well, it's a lot cheaper. Like, that's one less person. If I don't have a team steward, that's one less person. True, it is one less person. But unless your teams are predominantly mono-skilled, that is, they have one, engineering specialization, or it's all engineering, there's no, quality or UX or what have you, then you might get by all right with just that. But you definitely won't have the same experience. I'd be hard pressed to agree that you have the exact same experience as when you have a team, a full team steward, a delivery management professional in that space. Last question for tonight. When did you last have a haircut? February 2020. I had my last haircut right before, about a month before lockdown. And I have not had a cut since, as you can probably tell. But for those of you who have been faithfully following along with live streams and their replays, a bit of excitement for you. I am getting a haircut this weekend. Now, how much hair? In what way? Cornrows? Shaven? Who knows? That is the little tidbit of suspense for you to take into your weekend and carry with you until the subsequent episode comes out. And that subsequent episode will include us journeying further into the roles in effective development process at the team level. And until we see one another next, please do like, subscribe, and share this channel with your colleagues and friends. The more folks we have listening, the more questions we have coming in, the richer it allows me to make the content. And Lord knows I love doing that for you all. So please do like, subscribe, click on that old notifications bell, and we will see you in the next episode. And until then, I wish for you and your teams the greatest team health and effectiveness you can possibly have. And until then, I'm Barry Hawkins. Thanks a ton, and we'll see you next time.